So you think you were right? Bring it on, prove me wrong. Go put up a fight. The where do will knock you down. 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지.
제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기.
한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지?
김치? 종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
제가 섬진강이라는 그 시로 연작을 한 30편 정도 이렇게 썼습니다. 그중에 세 번째 섬진강 3을 한번 읽어드리겠습니다. 그대 정들었으리 지는 해 바라보며 반짝이는 잔물결이 한없이 밀려와
진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K 바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지?
김치? 종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥?
취향 따라, 입맛 따라. 이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지.
제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기.
한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
In our headlines on this Monday, December 16th, here in South Korea. The Constitutional Court here earlier this morning holds its first meeting in response to the Parliament's impeachment of the President to frame out its legal proceedings. Investigators request the President's attendance for questioning this coming Wednesday morning over his declaration of martial law to determine whether his acts amount to rebellion. Meanwhile, the benchmark Kospi index and the South Korean won shift back and forth between gains and losses on this Monday as market analysts forecast further fluctuations in the near future. The Constitutional Court held its first meeting earlier this morning in preparation of its decision to either remove the president from office or to reinstate him. Our Peunji starts us off.
South Korea's Constitutional Court has 180 days to decide whether or not to remove President Yoon from office. If the court removes Yoon or if he resigns, a presidential election must be held within 60 days. Court justices held their first meeting on the matter on Monday morning and agreed to hold a preparatory hearing on Yoon's impeachment next Friday.
The first preparatory hearing is set for Friday, December 27th at 2 p.m. Investigation records from the prosecution, police, etc. will be secured at an early date.
The court has also picked two justices, Lee Mi-sun and Chung Hyung-sik, to oversee the evidence examination process. They have also decided to form a legal review task force team composed of constitutional researchers. The court added that who has been determined as the presiding justice for the case will not be disclosed. Their identity is usually kept confidential, but it was disclosed in the case of former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment due to the significance of the matter. The Constitutional Court is typically composed of 9 justices, 3 designated by the President, 3 designated by the Supreme Court Chief, and 3 recommended by the Parliament. But amid a political deadlock, the 3 seats that were supposed to be recommended by the National Assembly have been vacant since October, and the court currently has only 6 sitting justices. Under South Korea's constitution, at least 6 out of a total of 9 justices must agree in order for an impeached president to be ousted. Technically, 6 justices could be enough, but they'd all need to vote in favor. However, given the significance of the case, experts believe the court would be reluctant to make such a historic decision without a full bench. So rival parties are now speeding up efforts to fill the 3 vacancies. 배은지, Arirang News.
Authorities, meanwhile, are requesting the president's attendance for questioning on Wednesday morning, that is December 18th, over his declaration of martial law earlier this month. Our An Sang-jin has the latest.
The Joint Investigation Team for the declaration of the December 3rd martial law decree has been unable to deliver a summons to President Yoon Suk-yeol. The Joint Investigation Headquarters, a collaboration between the National Police Agency Special Investigation Team, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, and the Defense Ministry Investigation Headquarters had headed to the presidential office on Monday morning. However, the Office of the President stated that with President Yoon's responsibility suspended, it is unclear whether a summons could be received. The Joint Investigation Headquarters team then headed to the president's official residence, but again failed to deliver the summons, with officials there unwilling to cooperate. But according to the police, a summons has also been sent via express mail. It notifies that Yoon has been asked to appear at the CIO on Wednesday for questioning regarding the accusations of insurrection and abuse of power. On Sunday, Yoon did not comply with a summons for him to appear at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office, reportedly saying that his legal team has not yet been finalized. Prosecutors issued another summons on Monday. Meanwhile, former Army Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-gun was arrested on Monday, while an arrest warrant for former commander of the Capital Defense Command Lee Jin-woo is under review at the Central Regional Military Court. Prosecutors also applied for an arrest warrant for the former martial law commander and suspended Army Chief of Staff General Park An-soo on Sunday for abuse of power and taking part in an insurrection. As the investigation process speeds up, more of the key figures from the declaration of martial law are being questioned. Police on Sunday arrested both the current commander Moon Sang-ho and former commander Do Sang-won of the Defense Intelligence Command. Commander Moon is accused of deploying martial law troops to the National Election Commission on December 3rd, while former commander Do is accused of helping the planning of the declaration with former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun. The police have carried out investigations on 43 on-duty soldiers and have stated that around 1,500 troops were mobilized on December 3rd. So far, the police have investigated 7 high-ranking officials in relation to the declaration of martial law. An Sang-jin, Arirang News.
The Prime Minister has taken over the President's State Affairs following the Parliament's vote in favor of impeachment this past weekend. Now, among the priorities shared by the acting President are public livelihood and national security. Our Oh Soo-young has details.
Acting President Han Duck-soo is aiming to build bridges between government and politics as he takes charge of state governance following Parliament's decision to seek the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. After assuming executive duties on Saturday, Han received reports from Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Park Chun-seop and Economic and Financial Secretary Shin Jung-bum at the government complex in central Seoul. Han is scheduled to be briefed by other senior secretaries on social affairs, science and technology and birth rates later this week, as presidential aides and the National Security Council must now report to the interim leader. To strengthen cooperation with political forces, acting President Han on Sunday spoke with National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik as they both committed to close collaboration between the government and parliament, with both highlighting the urgent challenge of restoring global confidence in South Korea and reviving the domestic economy. As Woo called for a consultation framework between the government and the National Assembly to stabilize state affairs, Han said he hoped to see cooperation between the ruling opposition parties and government. He pledged efforts to bridge differences and move forward with humility and an open mind.
My foremost priority is to ensure the safety of the nation and the stability of the people's daily lives without disruption. The government is committed to maintaining trust with our allies, including the United States and Japan, strengthening our security posture and making every effort to advance all areas of state affairs, including diplomacy, economy and people's livelihoods, especially for those in need, and public safety.
The acting president also met with Kwon Sung-dong, floor leader of the ruling People Power Party, who pledged to provide full support and cooperation as Han leads the country's cabinet. Kwon also called on Han to assume consultations between the ruling party and the government once the PPP overcomes its internal issues. There was no mention of whether Han would veto contentious bills proposed by the opposition at the National Assembly. The 6 bills include the Grain Management Act, which was railroaded through by the opposition party, as the move for the government to purchase excess rice from farmers is expected to be politically beneficial. Han will have to make a decision at the cabinet meeting on Tuesday. As Han leads a caretaker government over the months to come, he convened with all cabinet members on Sunday and emphasised that moving forward, the government's actions will be guided strictly by the constitution, the law and the vision for the future. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And at the National Assembly, the head of the ruling party has resigned, while the head of the opposition party calls for a consultative group to address state affairs. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
On the first Monday back at work following the National Assembly vote to impeach President Yoon over his December 3rd declaration of martial law, rival lawmakers strove to recover from the political upheaval in their respective ways. Early Monday, Han Dong-un resigned as leader of the ruling People Power Party 146 days into his term amid mounting pressure from senior PPP members, calling him responsible for the Assembly's approval of the impeachment motion against their conservative president 2 days prior.
I am stepping down as a People Power Party leader. The Supreme Council members have resigned and the council has broken down. It's no longer possible for me to carry out normal duties as the party leader.
Han was not an elected member of the National Assembly, but an external leader chosen mostly by the party supporters at its national convention in July. He was one of President Yoon's closest allies, having worked alongside him at the prosecution. But after the president attempted to impose martial law earlier this month, Han at last urged the party to impeach the president, going against the party consensus decided by the PPP lawmakers.
I tried to search for better ways than impeachment, but I couldn't. This is all my fault, and I apologize.
Han emphasized that despite the pain he feels, he still does not regret his decision. With Han's resignation, the PPP is taking steps to launch an emergency steering committee soon. This was while the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea continued to suggest a joint consultative group between members of the National Assembly and the government so they could swiftly stabilize state affairs.
The formation of the consultative group is something that the acting president also agrees with. We're good with the People Power Party taking the lead in the discussions, so I ask the PPP to please participate.
And if an all-around discussion on state affairs feels too much, Lee said the DP is up to discussing only the economy.
The name, the format, the content all do not matter. I ask for a consultative group to at least discuss the issues pertaining to the economy and people's livelihoods.
In response, the office of the Prime Minister and acting President Han Duck-soo said the government is ready to cooperate with the National Assembly, including both the ruling and opposition parties. But the PPP floor leader Kwon Sung-dong immediately rejected the offer, saying it was inappropriate for the DP to act as if it's the ruling party. The PPP further warned that acting President Han Duck-soo's administration is not one that DP leader Lee can try to administer. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The local bourse and the foreign exchange market have been shifting back and forth between losses and gains in response to the latest political events here. But overall, they appear to be holding steady. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has the closing numbers and more.
South Korean markets seem to be stabilizing, posting gains after the passing of President Yoon's impeachment motion on Saturday. On Monday, the benchmark Kospi closed down at 2,488, slightly below the 2,510 mark. But it opened at 2,511 and continued climbing before the increase gradually stabilized and a slight drop occurred. And the South Korean won closed up at 1,435 against the dollar as the financial authorities worked to alleviate market concerns. South Korea's second impeachment attempt, sparked by President Yoon's brief imposition of martial law, was successful after 204 lawmakers voted in favor, surpassing the 2/3 threshold needed in the 300-seat chamber. During Monday's emergency macroeconomic and financial issues meeting, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok said the government will continue its 24-hour monitoring of financial and foreign exchange markets, and that efforts will be made to maintain Korea's external credibility. This includes hosting investor relations sessions on the Korean economy, launching a task force dedicated to addressing the concerns of foreign investors, and increasing incentives for foreign investment. He also said that the implementation of key policies such as the inclusion of government bonds in the World Government Bond Index will be accelerated. South Korea is scheduled to be included in the index, the world's leading global bond index, in November 2025. This follows a meeting held on Sunday, just a day after the impeachment motion passed, where the finance minister pledged to focus on measures to stabilize the economy.
We will announce the 2025 economic policy direction with related ministries by the end of the year. As this is a crucial time that will shape the future of our economy, we will work more closely with the National Assembly.
The policy direction is expected to focus on key areas such as maintaining external credibility and addressing trade uncertainties. And the finance minister, in a meeting with Kwon Sun-dong, the new ruling party floor leader, on Monday afternoon, said the government will ensure that the budget passed by the National Assembly will be implemented without delay in the new year. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And findings for November show Korea's auto exports slumped on year, but their volume was substantial. Our Park Gon-woo explains.
A fall in South Korea's auto exports last month. According to the industry ministry on Monday, auto exports in November were at around $5.6 billion, down by more than 13% on year. That was mainly due to the start of pilot manufacturing at a Kia Motors factory in the U.S. in November and reduced shipment volume caused by bad weather. Trade volume that month was still the second highest for any November, mainly driven by exports of hybrid cars. Shipments of hybrid cars have exceeded $1 billion for 4 consecutive months, including November. Over 50,000 cars were sold domestically, reflecting an on-year increase of more than 20%. A ministry official underscored that improvements have been made from the year before.
Looking at the cumulative volume, there has been an on-year increase of 0.4%, which is a hopeful sign.
However, one expert expressed concern.
The country's credibility is declining due to the impeachment crisis, and there have been difficulties in export negotiations. These challenges are making it difficult to meet performance targets. There's a high possibility of poor performance, especially in the first half of next year, given the lack of a president and critical unresolved issues.
The expert also noted the importance of negotiations with the U.S., especially regarding tariffs and the Inflation Reduction Act. He stressed the need for cooperation between the ruling and opposition parties to address these issues. The industry ministry said it would do all it could so that economic activities proceed as normal, despite political risks in the country. It added the government will fully support related industries to help achieve the goal of surpassing $70 billion in auto exports this year for the second consecutive year. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
And in other news, over 10,000 visitors flocked to ski resorts in Korea's Gangwon-do Province this past Sunday. Now, most resorts have opened their beginner and intermediate slopes, and by the end of this year, all slopes, including the advanced, are expected to be in operation. Expectations are high for a tangible rise in visitors this winter season amid an exciting array of related events. In sports news, Tottenham Hotspur's Son Heung-min scored once and assisted twice in the Spurs' 5-0 win against Southampton this past Sunday. Now, Son scored his team's second goal for the Premier League match at St Mary's Stadium to post his 5th league goal for the season and 6th in all competitions. He also added 2 assists during Sunday's game to raise his total English Premier League assists to 68 to become the new record holder for a Tottenham player. Earlier this year, Son also became the Tottenham's 5th highest all-time goal scorer.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Ukrainian armed forces claim they have killed over 20 North Korean soldiers in Russia's Kursk Oblast, with media outlet Ukrainska Pravda publishing images and a video clip of the bodies. A commander of Ukraine's aerial reconnaissance unit, known by the call sign Magyar, published a video on his Telegram channel on Sunday, claiming that many of the bodies shown in the clip are of North Korean soldiers, while other bodies belong to other members of Russian forces. The quality of the footage is limited due to the low resolution of the drone camera used to capture it, making it difficult to confirm whether the bodies actually belong to North Korean forces or not. On Saturday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the Kremlin began deploying a noticeable number of North Korean troops to the Kursk region in Russian territory, where Ukrainian forces still control a number of settlements. According to previous statements by Ukrainian and US officials, some 11,000 North Korean troops have already been deployed in Russia. France's Indian Ocean territory of Mayotte was hit by Cyclone Chido on Saturday. Local officials say the death toll is likely to reach at least several hundred and possibly climb even into the thousands. Cyclone Chido, which Meteo France says is the strongest storm to hit Mayotte in over 90 years, struck the island with wind speeds of over 225 kilometers per hour, flattening houses and damaging government buildings and a hospital. French President Emmanuel Macron said that France will be sending 250 rescue workers, while France's Interior Minister said it feared a heavy death toll as all makeshift homes had been completely destroyed. A week after Syrian Islamic rebel forces toppled the al-Assad regime, the new government is aiming for normalcy as it reopens schools and universities on Sunday. The transition, which has reportedly been surprisingly smooth so far, was met with a population excited with a new sense of freedom, while violence and looting have reportedly been contained to a minimum. However, Syria's economy is still in devastation, with widespread poverty and high levels of inflation and unemployment. Now, Syria's new government has been renewing diplomatic ties, with the UK announcing a roughly $63 million aid package to Syria on Sunday. The French capital, Paris, is now home to what the organizers claim is the world's biggest temporary indoor ice rink. It opened its doors to skaters on Saturday in time for the Christmas season. Situated in Paris's Grand Palais, which hosted events for this year's Summer Olympic Games, the indoor ice rink covers some 3,000 square meters, with an entry fee of €30 for adults and €18 for under-10s, rental ice skates included. The Grand Palais ice rink will operate until January 8, 2025. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
After a cold morning, temperatures remained at around 4 degrees Celsius during the day in Seoul today. The feels-like temperatures were even colder than the actual readings. This frigid weather will get stronger, and the morning temperature in Seoul will plummet to -7 degrees on Wednesday. From the evening, rain and snow will start from the central west coast areas and will expand to some central and southern parts of the country overnight. The expected snowfall is 1 to 5 centimeters in the center parts of the country, Jeollabuk-do Province, Gyeongsang-buk-do Province, and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. It will have mostly stopped by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Daejeon will start off at -2 degrees, Chuncheon -8 degrees. Seoul will move up to 2 degrees during the daytime, Daegu and Gyeongju 7 degrees. It will be the coldest morning of this winter so far on Wednesday, and highs will only move up to 0 degrees. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President Yoon
South Korea's economy will grow.
The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged.
Mission complete for rocket booty South Korea.
Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the World Expo 2030.
Arirang.
After an 11-day standoff between the presidential office and the National Assembly, an impeachment motion was passed by the parliament with over 200 lawmakers voting in favor of suspending the president from duty for his declaration of martial law. We have more on this development on Press Perspective today. Hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Press Perspective for this Monday, December 16th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. The Parliament voted in favour of impeaching the President this past Saturday for his declaration of martial law earlier this month. Now, that being said, President Yoon Suk-yeol's political fate now lies in the hands of the Constitutional Court. For more on this, I have Andrew Salmon with the Washington Times here in the studio. Andrew, welcome back.
Hello.
I also have Sébastien Fellaty with French daily Le Figaro live on the line. Sébastien, it's good to have you with us.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Right, Andrew, let's begin with the results of the impeachment vote at the Parliament this past Saturday. Were the results, would you say, largely within the expectations of the people here?
Yeah, I think they largely were, as you put it. Everyone I speak to thinks it was as likely that someone in South Korea in 2024 would institute martial law as Kim Jong-un would institute liberal democracy. So this was an extraordinary shock when it happened. And I think balance has been restored. So for the Korean people, they stood up for democracy. They did the right thing. No question, no problem. I think there's a much wider question which needs to be asked in greater depth in the months and years ahead, which is while the people may have a sound democratic sort of compass, what about the governance structure? In the last 5 administrations, we've had 3 impeachments, 2 presidents jailed, 1 ex-president commits suicide. There's something dubious about this. This is not normal. And we've got a very confrontational political culture, and we've got a bipartisan structure. Unicameral National Assembly and a presidency. And instead of sort of checking and balancing them, they're just constantly doing this. It's a politics as war. So, I mean, my sense is that one thing Koreans might start talking about in the future to change this dynamic is perhaps adding a 3rd power structure, which logically speaking, will be an upper house in the National Assembly. Then you have a more diffused power, and it's no longer bipartisan. But that's a discussion for Koreans to have in the long term.
Right, once the political power vacuum here has been filled then. Sebastian, meanwhile, what has been the response to this latest result among the public here? What have you been hearing on the ground, Sebastian?
Well, I mean, on Yoido last afternoon, of course, just right after the announcement of the successful vote on the impeachment, of course, there was a huge sense of relief on the ground among the people there, especially the 100,000 of people who gather around the National Assembly. There was even some people crying. There was some people just dancing. Like there was this kind of sense of K-pop concert atmosphere. But I think the major sense I had from people talking there was about a sense of relief. But people feel there that the Korea is not out of the woods, that the crisis is still on. And we've heard also President Yoon very combative speech a couple of hours later. There's a long process ahead, and clearly people have a sense that the crisis opened by the martial law promulgation is still on, and we've seen also we are in a very polarized landscape, and these 2 sides are still fighting heavily. I mean, just right now around Gangwon-do, there's still demonstration in the street of people. We're hearing people supporting President Yoon. We've seen around Yongsan presidential office this extraordinary sight of like flowers, funeral flowers, sent by the supporter of the impeachment. But we've also seen like this pink bouquet of flower sent by supporter of the president, lining up all around the wall of the presidential office. So this country is still very much split. And even though Yoon's approval rate is extremely low at around 11% before the vote, there's still a sizable chunk of people in the conservative side who don't want to go through the same process they went through under Park Geun-hye. They don't want to give up everything. So I think we're opening a phase that where we'll see an impeachment process that is much more contentious than in 2017.
Right. And Andrew, could you walk us through the proceedings that are likely to take place ahead now that the Parliament has voted in support of impeaching the president?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're not in uncharted territory. This is the third presidential impeachment, so this path has been walked before. And the last two impeachments, one was overturned, one was upheld. So anything could feasibly happen. Basically, the Constitutional Court, once it begins sitting, has 180 days to make its decision. After that, if the impeachment is upheld, then we have, I think, 60 days for a new presidential election. That is a pretty clear roadmap forward. I think the one issue that may get in the way of that is right at the very, very beginning. The Constitutional Court has a 9-judge panel. Currently, it only has 6 justices occupying those seats. And Sebastian and I and other foreign correspondents were told last week by constitutional law experts that the court will almost certainly want to try this hugely high-profile case with a full complement of justices. So we expect to see the appointment via the National Assembly of 3 more judges in, I would guess, the days ahead.
Right. Sebastian, that being said, and keeping in mind what Andrew has said, how soon can we expect a snap election to fill the power vacuum here in the country?
Well, this is still a very open question. We are talking about a matter of months. If we are based on what happened under Park Geun-hye impeachment process, it took around 3 months to get an impeachment confirmed, and then we got election. The rules say that once the impeachment has been confirmed, an election, presidential election, needs to be organized within 60 days, like around 2 months. So at best, we could expect a presidential election around April or May, which leave us like still 6 months of kind of power vacuum. Of course, the former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is now president by interim and is guiding the country, but he doesn't have the political legitimacy of an election, and 6 months is a long way to go. And as Andrew mentioned, this time there's far more challenges in the proceeding. First, because as he said, the Constitutional Court is not doesn't have a full number of judges, but we also have a political atmosphere that is much more entrenched. And we've seen on the conservative side that there is still people who are even though they criticize President Yoon's rash decision to impose martial law, they don't necessarily want to give the key of the country to the opposition. And I think here the memories of 2017 is still hanging heavily on the conservative side. Here, they remember that at that time they played by the rule. They felt that they had to, in the name of national unity, to give up on Park Geun-hye, but then they felt they got nothing out of it. And there's a lot of people in that side of the political landscape who feel this time we should be much more bold in protecting our value and our interest. So that opened the case for maybe a more complicated process. So April, May sounds like a possible target, but we can't exclude a delay. The court has 180 days to rule out, but even that term is actually just not fully mandatory. We can't exclude something longer, but probably the judge will want to speed it up in the name of the national crisis the country is facing.
Right. Andrew, do you suppose this political fallout here in the country would perhaps tip the scale in favor of an opposition party win in the case of a snap election? If that is the case, how would that affect Korea's foreign policy going forward?
Yeah, I think you're speaking very, very, very prudently there, Sunny. I mean, it seems blatantly obvious to me that this terrible error, this colossal miscalculation that Yoon made has absolutely tipped the scale against his party. And this raises huge questions for Korean conservatism going forward. This will be their second consecutive president facing impeachment. How is it they're choosing these kinds of leaders? So we've got an issue with the right wing, and indeed the crisis has already kicked off. Today, Han Dong-hoon, the party leader, resigned, and that shows you there's carnage to come within the party, and that's not going to help them if we have a snap election any time in the next few months, which looks pretty likely. In terms of foreign policy, if the opposition DPK, Democratic Party of Korea, led by this very impressive sort of firebrand leader, Lee Jae-myung, if he manages to stay out of jail, because of course he faces a vast raft of legal challenges too, but if his Teflon continues to work and he does become president, we'll see, I think, almost an overturning of Yoon's foreign policy, which will mean a shift probably away from the US toward China, absolutely, definitely away from Japan, possibly back towards North Korea. So, you know, this is one of the issues with democracies. When parties change, policies change, and that affects foreign policy too.
Right. And Sebastian, this is an impromptu question. What are your thoughts about what are your thoughts, that is, about the future of Korea's foreign policy in the case of a democratic win of the snap election?
Well, it's of course still very early, but as Andrew mentioned, we know that Lee Jae-myung and the Minju-dang have been consistently saying that Korea should have a far more balanced approach to foreign policy, criticizing the alignment with the US that has been advocated by President Yoon. And clearly here, the idea is that you should talk more to China. You should also reopen dialogue with North Korea. So these are the traditional policies of the Democratic Party, and that would be a major shift from what President Yoon has been doing, because President Yoon has been really trying to work as closely as possible with the US. But of course, there's a bigger question mark here. There's another game changer, which is the return of Donald Trump to the White House. We know that Donald Trump has a very different approach, has showed a very different approach to the Korean Peninsula in his first mandate. He has been meeting the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during summits, and he's also had contentious negotiation with Seoul when it comes to defense cost sharing, and all this is probably going to come back into the picture because based on what we've heard from the candidate Trump. So this is an additional layer, and of course the question how South Korea is going to adjust to this new environment is essential. But for that we also need to wait to see what actually President Trump has in store once he's inaugurated as president later in January.
Right, and speaking about Mr. Trump's upcoming North Korea policy, Andrew, there have been a few rumblings, if you will, about the possibility of a second Trump administration perhaps accepting a nuclear-powered North Korea. What are your thoughts about that possibility?
Yeah, I mean, this, on the one hand, would be, I think, just accepting the very, very obvious reality that North Korea is de facto a nuclear state. The question is, do you accept it de jure? And that's a very hard sell to the American public. If an American president says we have to accept this reality. Previously, pretty much all negotiations between Washington and Pyongyang have been somehow predicated on this idea of eventual denuclearization. If that's taken off the table, we're in completely uncharted territory. I think one potential ramification of that position, if Trump does indeed take that position, would be South Korea would have to very, very seriously start thinking about its own potential nuclear deterrent. And again, we don't know where Mr. Trump would stand on that. Who knows? He's in favor of allies up-arming, up-spending. Perhaps he would go along with that, perhaps in return for moving some troops out of South Korea. But this is all up in the air. I think these discussions, if they do happen, are potentially game-changing both for North Korea and South Korea.
Right. In the meantime, back on the political front, back on the local political front, that is, Sebastian, earlier last Thursday, this is something you touched upon earlier last Thursday, the president vowed to challenge all legal cases, President Yoon Suk-yeol, that is. He denied any wrongdoing. On Saturday night, following the parliament's vote again, he spoke about not stepping down, but stepping aside for the time being to deal with the legal proceedings against him. That being said, Sebastian, what appear to be some of the broader takeaways from the president's remarks as of late?
Well, clearly the attitude is defiant. He had already said that just before on December 12 during a surprise TV appearance. He's basically challenging and he's ready to fight till the end, as he said. And this is really significant because it's quite a different take from what we've seen under the case of Park Geun-hye when she was impeached. Of course, she tried to fall in court. She was trying to defend herself, but we didn't have the same. We're not seeing here the same level of fighting spirit. Clearly, the president is adamant. He's now saying that the imposition of martial law was the right decision, and he wants to make his case until the last stand. And this opened the gate for, again, a much more complicated process. And of course, there are here the calculation of the conservative side. As Andrew mentioned, we know that on the opposition, President the Minju-dong leader, Lee Jae-myung, is facing some critical judgment from the court in the coming months. By spring, and there could be a temptation to try to play with time on the conservative side, try to slow down as much the process to make sure that he's potentially out of the presidential race. So there's a lot of tactical calculation that could play in the conservative side, and of course, President Yoon, being combative in that regard, could also still appeal to some of the voters. I mean, even if they will agree that impeachment was necessary, they don't want to condemn him completely because they will say there is a point. We cannot give all the power to the opposition in this case.
Right, and staying with the president's defense of his decision to declare martial law, Andrew, he claims that the imposition of martial law was an act of governance and not rebellion. Now, his words have fueled quite a bit of debate within the ruling political party. How do you explain this divide within the party, the ruling party, that is?
Yeah, well, I think, well, to the best of my knowledge, it is the privilege of the president to, in cases of a national emergency or a national security emergency, to declare martial law. So, per se, that's not unconstitutional. But there's a whole range of steps you're supposed to take, one of which is notifying the National Assembly, not sending commandos into the Assembly to drag people out so they can't form a quorum and vote down the state of martial law, which, of course, is exactly what happened. So what he says, and he was a state prosecutor his entire career. He's no fool. He's graduated from Seoul National University Law School, which is the Oxbridge or the Harvard of Korea. I think he has some idea of what he's talking about. Nevertheless, huge questions about not the act as much as the way he carried out the act, the execution. Moving forward, I mean, I think the PPP, the People Power Party, like every party, has factions within it who support various different leaders. This is a normal part of any democratic government, democratic system rather. In Japan, these factions even have names. So clearly, only 12 out of, I think, 108 lawmakers in the party voted for impeachment. So there's a lot of people who believe that it is their constitutional, or rather their democratic right to represent their constituents who perhaps do support, who clearly did support Yoon and possibly even supported his martial law declaration. But my guess, looking ahead, is that the PPP is going to be tearing itself to pieces in the next few months, and that's going to be very problematic for Han Duck-soo, the Prime Minister who's leading the caretaker government and who's got to represent Korea not just nationally but on the international stage at a time when we've got a power transition in Washington, which is the most important ally for South Korea. So there's a lot of challenges both for the party and for the ministers, the cabinet members in Han's caretaker government going forward. So I sort of agree with Sebastian. This crisis, the immediate crisis has passed. We've now got a roadmap forward, but we still are in a political crisis in the sense that we need a firm hand at the national helm, and it's impossible for Han Duck-soo to be that firm hand.
Right. Andrew, the Constitutional Court took, and I believe 63 days to come up with its ruling on the case, on the impeachment case against former President Roh Moo-hyun back in 2004. Okay. It took 91 days to come up with its decision for former President Park Geun-hye. Some are saying that its decision for President Yoon Suk-yeol may come out within those times, either 63 days or 91 days. That being said, do you suppose chances are high for the Constitutional Court to perhaps uphold the decision by the Parliament?
I mean, that's in the hands of the Constitutional Court.
Question.
I'm not a betting man. If you held my hand to the fire and forced me to make a decision, I would say, looking at it comparatively, imposition of martial law, deployment of special forces to prevent a vote taking place, apparently the preparation of a detention camp for politicians and some journalists. This is far, far more egregious than anything Park Geun-hye ever did. So my guess, my sense, and I'm terrible at predicting things, is that they may well uphold the impeachment, yeah.
Right, of course. And Andrew, this, of course, is just your guess, as you clarified earlier. Right. Sebastian, meanwhile, what are some of the upcoming events on the local political front this week to keep an eye on?
Well, of course, the key thing is the proceedings of the start, the really kick off of the trial of President Yoon by the Constitutional Court. I mean, and this is now been just announced to be scheduled on the December 27th. The court will have a first hearing on this case. So that will officially kickstart that long process you mentioned just. So that will bring a lot of attention. The president himself is supposed to attend, but it's not compulsory for him to attend. So that would be a first indication whether he faces the court, or whether he decides to abstain and even to stay out of the limelight in a signs of defiance. That would be a first signal of his strategy. But of course, meanwhile, we've just seen today, like as Andrew mentioned, the Ahn Dong-hoon, the president of the PPP, resigning. We can expect a kind of a domino effect in the coming days all around the political landscape of Korea. This is a kind of political earthquake where we're going through, and there will be ramification in every corner of Korean political establishment. And we can imagine that all the players are now recalibrating their strategy for the coming months. And of course, for that upcoming election that is going to be already decisive for the future of Korea for the next 5 years. So I think the coming days is going to be a lot of also consultation, recalibration for the next chapter on the peninsula.
Right, much to look forward to then. All right, Sebastian, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you very much.
And here in the studio, and Andrew, thank you so much for graciously taking my impromptu questions as well.
Thank you.
Right, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you